A night typically reserved for dazzling celebrations transformed into an unexpected revelation. The 25th BET Awards, a spectacle of flash and fanfare, suddenly became the platform for a surprising figure, Tyler Perry. Usually known for his quiet support, especially for Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, Perry seized the microphone and delivered what felt like a live confession. His tone was measured, yet the implications of his words cut through Meghan's carefully curated public persona with precision. There was no direct naming, but the message resonated loudly, leaving a stunned silence in its wake across Hollywood and the digital world. This wasn't merely a speech, it was a public unveiling, a profound fracture in trust that would send shockwaves through established relationships. Cast your mind back to 2020. Harry and Meghan had just severed ties with the royal family, adrift and exposed to relentless public gaze. Who emerged as their unexpected savior? Tyler Perry. He provided them refuge in his $18 million Beverly Hills estate, arranged their security, settled their bills, and essentially orchestrated their gentle transition to life in America. At the time, it appeared to be the epitome of selfless friendship, an act of profound generosity from someone who understood the immense pressure of celebrity. It seemed a gift, freely given. However, beneath the surface, that act of kindness subtly, almost imperceptibly, evolved into a transaction where only one party seemed to gain. A dynamic, as Perry would later confide, that left him feeling emotionally and financially depleted. The true cost of that initial haven was about to be laid bare in the most public forum possible, igniting a controversy that would forever alter their narrative. This hidden cost is precisely what made Perry's address at the BET Awards so utterly staggering. He never uttered Meghan's name. He didn't have to. Instead, he spun a veiled tale of opening his home, offering unwavering support, and extending his trust, only to be abandoned once his generosity had served its purpose. Some individuals treat favors as entitlements, never intending to reciprocate, he declared, his voice calm, yet the message was unmistakable. The cameras didn't need to focus on anyone specific. For those aware of the history, the identity of his subject was glaringly obvious. Behind closed doors, sources suggest Perry had suppressed his frustrations for years, enduring what he perceived as repeated slights. But on that night, a line was crossed. The speech itself was merely the visible tip of a vast, submerged iceberg, forged from years of simmering resentment and unacknowledged obligations. Those close to Perry point to an alleged incident involving a private jet as a pivotal moment. Meghan reportedly framed it as a simple request, seeking access to his personal aircraft without any discussion of logistics or expense. When Perry, not due to financial inability, but because he felt profoundly exploited, declined her request, Meghan allegedly reacted with considerable displeasure. That moment, he reportedly told confidants, crystallized a painful realization. What began as a genuine gesture of camaraderie had hardened into a clear pattern of self-serving demands, and Perry wasn't alone in recognizing this shift. According to multiple individuals within his professional and personal circles, staff members, industry colleagues, even producers, quiet warnings had begun to circulate. The message was consistent. Meghan doesn't return favors. She collects them as social currency, then severs ties when people no longer serve her agenda. This wasn't just about a flight, it was about a deeper game of manipulation being played. For influence, a game Perry was no longer willing to tolerate. Initially, Perry dismissed these concerns. He genuinely believed he was providing vital assistance to two individuals facing immense challenges. Yet, as time progressed, as the lucrative Netflix and Spotify contracts materialized, as their financial standing soared, and as any reciprocal gratitude remained conspicuously absent, it became undeniably clear there was no intention of giving back. The ultimate breaking point for Perry wasn't just the alleged private jet incident, or even a questionable business proposition that lacked substance. It was the alarming realization that Meghan wasn't simply unappreciative. She was actively exploiting their friendship to gain leverage and access. An individual familiar with Perry's team revealed that Meghan had reportedly attempted to use his name to gain entry into an influential funding circle in early 2024. She allegedly referenced his backing in a pitch meeting without his explicit permission, implying he was a silent partner in her new media venture. When news of this blatant misuse of his reputation reached Perry, he was reportedly furious. It was at that point he made the significant decision to speak out, not to engage in gossip, but to unequivocally safeguard his hard-earned reputation from being co-opted. And as this influential voice broke the silence, others, who had long held their tongues due to fear or loyalty, finally found the courage to share their own experiences. The floodgates had opened. A former assistant from Meghan's team, speaking anonymously, characterized the work environment as relentlessly emotionally draining. They asserted that Meghan exerted absolute control over every narrative, demanded unquestioning loyalty, and ruthlessly penalized anyone who dared to challenge her decisions. A producer who had collaborated with the couple on their now-canceled Spotify deal painted an even bleaker picture, claiming Meghan's relentless pursuit of perfection stifled every promising concept. She didn't seek collaborative partners, they stated. She desired subservient figures. Even Oprah's inner circle, once thought to be closely aligned with Meghan, began to subtly distance themselves. Sources indicate a distinct lack of genuine friendly exchanges between the two camps for months, and when Perry's speech reverberated across the internet, there was a noticeable absence of any defense or solidarity from Oprah's team, just a deliberate silence. The carefully constructed facade of female empowerment and independence was disintegrating, not due to external attacks, but from the raw truths articulated by the very individuals who had once championed her journey. For many, it felt as though a veil had been lifted, revealing a starkly different reality. These were not fabricated tales concocted by sensationalist tabloids. These were accounts from individuals who had genuinely collaborated with her, offered assistance, and in Perry's unique case, literally provided shelter. As the days turned into weeks, what began as one man's courageous words escalated into a profound cultural shift. Meghan Markle, once perceived as beyond reproach, was suddenly vulnerable to widespread public skepticism. The repercussions weren't limited to her public image, they began directly impacting her finances. Reports of Netflix reevaluating its long-term commitment and other potential investors withdrawing suggested Archewell's financial prospects were increasingly precarious. Sources close to the foundation disclosed that several internal projects had already been put on hold, planned hires frozen, and budget reviews were occurring weekly. What had once been a flourishing brand, propelled by celebrity appeal and major platform deals, was now mired in uncertainty and damage control. Public trust, so painstakingly cultivated, was also eroding. Meghan had long cultivated the image of a misunderstood figure navigating royal oppression, a symbol of empowerment, an underdog challenging the establishment. But now, with insiders sharing stories of emotional manipulation, excessive demands, and selective loyalty, people began to question the authenticity of that narrative. Social media sentiment, once divided, began to heavily lean towards doubt. Hashtags that once rallied support were now inundated with criticism, sharp memes and unflattering comparisons depicting her as entitled and insincere. For Meghan, who had meticulously managed every aspect of her public image, this was more than just a public relations setback. It was a deep identity crisis. The narratives she championed, feminist icon, victim of royal cruelty, self-made media mogul, were all being scrutinized and doubted in real time. Even long-standing admirers found themselves silenced. Media outlets that once eagerly published glowing features were now exercising caution, unwilling to associate with a brand seemingly in freefall. This was no ordinary public relations ordeal. It was a harsh lesson in Hollywood's most unforgiving currency, trust. Behind the gilded doors, insiders reveal Meghan was in a state of intense distress. She reportedly bombarded Perry with furious messages following the BET speech, accusing him of profound betrayal, public humiliation, and irrevocably damaging her family's legacy. But Perry offered no reply. Not then, not later. His silence spoke volumes. Friends of the Hollywood mogul confirmed he had been emotionally cornered for years, constantly pressured to give more, disclose less, and maintain unwavering loyalty to an individual who evidently viewed loyalty as a conditional exchange. Then, other voices joined the growing chorus. A respected publicist shared that Meghan's team had allegedly attempted to blacklist journalists for simply asking unscripted questions. A former Archewell consultant disclosed that Meghan frequently disregarded strategic advice if it didn't perfectly align with her personal narrative. One former staff member starkly described the workplace as a place where gratitude was extinguished. The accounts were damning, not due to their dramatic flair, but because they consistently echoed the same troubling pattern: control, manipulation, and emotional leverage. Even prominent Hollywood figures who typically remained neutral began to speak with caution. Studio executives murmured about Meghan's reputation as challenging to work with. Some even quipped that engaging with her team was akin to playing chess with a mirror. Nothing ever reflected back truthfully. Everything was meticulously spun. And then came the stark statistics. A recent poll indicated that support for the Sussexes in the US had plummeted by over 30% in the past year. In the UK, they were already widely perceived as outcasts by many. Now the repercussions had become global. Sponsors were actively disengaging. Potential collaborators were disappearing. Meghan's once ascending empire was now serving as a cautionary tale. Throughout this turmoil, Harry remained largely silent. Some speculate he's desperately attempting to salvage what remains of their public standing behind the scenes. Others believe he's simply exhausted, worn down by years of relentless media scrutiny, severe family estrangement, and now, witnessing the collapse of their closest inner circle. The sheer timing of Perry's unexpected public declaration intensified, its impact landing precisely as Meghan and Harry were attempting to launch a new documentary exploring themes of power and freedom. Abruptly, prospective investors began to withdraw. The fragile thread of trust, already strained, completely unraveled. The carefully constructed illusion, built brick by painstaking brick, fractured beyond repair. And just like that, Meghan's last genuine Hollywood advocate, the man who had offered them sanctuary, publicly disengaged, leaving her exposed to the unyielding glare of an unforgiving industry. Hollywood, a city fundamentally built on unwritten rules and reciprocal favors, rarely takes public stances in personal disputes. But Tyler Perry was no ordinary industry figure. He commands a vast studio empire, universally respected not only for his creative prowess, but for his dignified and discreet approach. Therefore, when someone of his stature casts such a shadow, especially over an individual he once fiercely protected, the ripple effect is immense, almost seismic. The critical phone calls began pouring in the very next morning, the kind of calls that fundamentally alter career trajectories. A producer reportedly attached to Meghan and Harry's latest Netflix project quietly pulled their support mere hours after the BET Awards. Another significant investor, who had already participated in 2 extensive planning meetings for the venture, stated unequivocally, "I refuse to be involved in something that feels this toxic." This wasn't a critique of the project's content. It was a damning indictment of the individuals associated with it. Meghan's name, once considered a draw for platforms seeking to project an image of progressiveness and inclusivity, was now perceived as a glaring red flag, a liability no one was willing to accept. Back at Archewell, Meghan's public relations team engaged in a desperate flurry of activity. They reached out to prominent media outlets, attempting to reshape the narrative, their objective clear: to portray Perry as a bitter, outdated figure who simply misunderstood Meghan's pure intentions. They offered exclusive interviews, dangled access to supposedly behind-the-scenes footage, and even proposed a podcast rebuttal. Yet none of their efforts gained traction. Journalists, usually eager for an exclusive story, remained unmoved. If anything, the sheer intensity of their pushback backfired, giving off an undeniable scent of desperation. The harder they pressed, the more people began to question. What exactly were they so determined to conceal? The accounts weren't confined to whispers in Hollywood corridors. They were quantified. A recent YouGov poll revealed a dramatic plunge in Meghan Markle's popularity in the UK, reaching an all-time low of only 20% favorable opinion among Britons. This represented a sharp decline from her peak favorability of 55% in 2019. In the US, while her favorability remained slightly higher, it too had experienced a significant downturn. This wasn't merely a temporary dip, it was a sustained, stark rejection, eroding the very foundation of her meticulously crafted public image. Tyler Perry's speech wasn't boisterous. It wasn't overtly confrontational. It didn't need to be. It was forthright, understated, and surgically precise. And that, precisely, is what made it so devastating. It didn't merely expose an isolated incident of perceived ingratitude. It laid bare a deeply ingrained pattern of behavior. And in an industry where reputation isn't just an asset, but the very essence of survival, Meghan Markle just learned a brutal truth: even royalty can face exile twice. Once from the crown, and now from the very culture she sought to embrace. The lingering question remains: will the fissures in her carefully constructed kingdom ever truly mend? Or has the foundation irrevocably crumbled, leaving behind a legacy forever shadowed by the very allies she chose to abandon?